Okay. So today we are gonna take a closer look about the United States impact during the World War II. So before
Okay.
we start, I just kind of, our regular procedures. I'm gonna ask you what do you know about World War II, and like what are kind of some facts or like some important.
I know about D-Day. I know about some of the battles. Really, that's about it.
Okay. Let's just watch a short video about World War II, how it started, what happened, and then we're gonna take a closer look about some and go to some details.
A brief overview
Can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear it.
of World War II. The war in Europe began in September 1939 when Nazi Germany, under Adolf Hitler, invaded Poland. Using blitzkrieg tactics, the country was quickly overtaken. The world was shocked. Britain and France responded by declaring war on Germany, but took little action. This became known as the Phony War. But in 1940, German offensives rapidly defeated Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. The British Army, meanwhile, was on the retreat, being evacuated from Dunkirk. Britain, alone, was attacked by Germany during the Battle of Britain and the Blitz. However, the Luftwaffe failed to defeat the RAF. In June 1941, Hitler invaded Russia under the codename Operation Barbarossa, and in December 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, bringing the USA into the war. Germany, Italy, and Japan formed the Axis powers, while Britain, Russia, and the USA made up the major combatants on the Allied side. In 1942, the Nazis implemented their final solution, a plan to exterminate all Jewish people. Critical battles followed that would dramatically change the course of the war. These were Midway in the Pacific Theater, June 1942, El Alamein in Egypt, November 1942, and Stalingrad in Russia, January 1943. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, the Allies launched Operation Overlord, invading Normandy, France. The Red Army advanced in the east and was the first to reach the German capital of Berlin. Germany surrendered in May 1945, shortly after Adolf Hitler committed suicide. On 6th of August 1945, the Americans dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Japan surrendered on VJ Day, 15th of August 1945. The war was over. World War II lasted from 1939 to 1945 and remains the most geographically widespread military conflict the world has ever seen. Subscribe to see more fun history videos. Get your copy of Simple History.
Okay, that was kind of an overview of the World War II, but we're gonna get a little bit more. We're gonna take a little bit closer perspective of the United States influence in the World War II.
Okay.
Okay, so first, as they mentioned in the video, we have kind of two sides. We have on one side Germany, Italy, Japan. They were kind of the bad guys because they started everything, and Germany was. So the big thing that we need to understand is how Germany as a country felt after World War I, because they felt humiliated and diminished by the Treaty of Versailles. Treaty of Versailles is basically a peaceful agreement that the World War I is going to end. So the German people eventually turned to Adolf Hitler and fascism, believing the Führer could help Germany become a powerful nation once again. So I don't know why, but in that time there was the big thing about being like just having one nation in control of the whole world. Like that was just kind of the mindset that, and just to overcome everything with power and guns, which honestly we see even nowadays. Can you relate this this war to something that's happening nowadays, like right now? We have this war in Israel, right, against Israel and Palestine.
That's true.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I have a friend in Israel, and this summer, like in June, at the end of June, I'm going to Serbia. And initially, my plan was to go and visit Jerusalem, visit my friend in Israel, go to Tel Aviv, and just hang out with him. That's my friend from university, so we were very good. And whenever, like, we were in touch in last couple of months about me visiting him with my wife, but this war happened, and the sad thing is, literally 2 days ago, he lives in Tel Aviv, and he sent me a video at 1 a.m. how he's running out of his house to go to a closest shelter, like shirtless, just kind of in the background. You can hear a lot of alarms, like sirens and stuff, and people just running, trying to find shelter. So
Yeah.
with this type of wars we see even nowadays, and it's just something that we as people will never kind of find a peaceful solution. I mean, there are some things in the past that were solved peacefully, but unfortunately people find it easier to just kind of overcome someone's territory and everything with guns and power. So that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Okay, we have in Italy, like we mentioned, another fascist dictator, Benito Mussolini, was rising to power. So we have two totalitarian leaders that wanted to join forces and come together and just basically destroy the world. At the same time, Japan was making changes on its own. Japan did not adopt fascism. It remained an imperial power under Emperor Hirohito. So the United States, adopting a policy of isolationism after World War I, passed a series of laws called the Neutrality Act to enact this policy. So after World War I, they just wanted to stay kind of on the side. They didn't want any involvement. They wanted to focus on their own development and just growing as a country. In the early years, the only U.S. involvement was financed aid and war supplies given to the allies. So, but on the other side, unfortunately, United States could not basically resist the war because they were attacked by Japanese in the Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. So that's how they get involved in the war.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are gonna let's read a short biography of Adolf Hitler, even though he's not a United States citizen. He played a very big role during the World War II. So I want you to kind of have a closer look. Yeah. So let's read. I'm gonna read the first passage, and then you can read the second, and then I will just finish it. It's short. So he was dictator of Germany, born April 20th, 1889 in Austria. He died in 1945 in Berlin, Germany. He committed suicide. He was the leader of Germany. He was leader of the Nazi Party and became a powerful dictator. Started World War II by invading Poland and then invading many other European countries. He is also known for wanting to exterminate the Jewish people in the Holocaust. So can you please finish the how did he grow up passage?
Adolf was born on April 20th, 1889 in a city named Braunau am Inn in the country of Austria. His family moved around some, living a short while in Germany and then back in Austria. Hitler did not have a happy childhood. Both his parents died fairly young, and many of his brothers and sisters died as well. Adolf did not do well in school. He was expelled from a couple of schools before he moved to Vienna, Austria, to pursue his dream of becoming an artist. While living in Vienna, Hitler found that he did not have much artistic talent, and he soon became very poor. He would later move to Munich, Germany, in hopes of becoming an architect.
So what's kind of funny to notice here is that it says Hitler did not have a happy childhood. Both his parents died fairly young, and many of his brothers and sisters died as well. So, and we can see that in many biographies from 80s, like Karl Marx, for example. He also had a traumatic childhood, which ultimately caused him to kind of hate God and just kind of be a very big on atheism and just not having God in his role in as like a powerful figure. So it is
Yeah,
it
he
is
was
kind of.
Jewish when he was younger. He blamed God.
Say again, please.
He was Jewish when he was younger, so he blamed God.
Exactly. So it is kind of a common thing for some people that didn't have a happy childhood to find some
Yeah.
reasons to hate God and to blame God for everything that happened to them. When World War I began, Hitler joined the German army. Adolf was awarded twice with the Iron Cross for bravery. It was during World War I that Hitler became a strong German patriot and also came to love war. After the war, Hitler entered politics. Many Germans were upset that they had lost the war. They were also not happy with the Treaty of Versailles, which not only blamed the war on Germany, but took land from Germany. At the same time, Germany was in an economic depression. Many people were poor between the depression and the Treaty of Versailles. The time was ripe for Hitler to rise to power. Once entering politics, Hitler discovered that he was gifted to giving speeches. His speeches were powerful and people believed what he said. Hitler joined the Nazi Party and soon became its leader. He promised Germany that if he became leader, he would restore Germany to greatness in Europe. In 1933, he was elected Chancellor of Germany. After becoming Chancellor, there was no stopping Hitler. He had studied his idol Benito Mussolini of Italy about how to install a fascist government and become a dictator. So Hitler was dictator of Germany. Let me just kind of go back to this. There is a book called The Secret. I don't want to go too much into details, but in that book, the main thing is kind of the law of attraction. What it means. The law of attraction is something that you kind of strongly believe that it's good for you, that you want to attract those things to happen in your life. So Hitler, when you kind of look at his speeches and ideas and his kind of posture and then how he would bring certain speeches, he really thought that he was doing a good thing for humanity. So like he was kind of obsessed and he strongly believed that law of attraction and just him doing a good thing will help the world and will save the world. So he was kind of too, I mean, like he didn't know. It's not like he didn't know he was doing the wrong thing, but he believed that he was doing the right thing. So that's the saddest part. So can you please read World War II?
In order for Germany to grow, Hitler thought the country needed more land or living space. He first annexed Austria as part of Germany and then took over Czechoslovakia. This wasn't enough, however. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland and World War II began. Hitler formed an, I can't read after that. Hitler formed an alliance with the Axis powers of Japan and Italy. They were fighting the Allied powers of Britain, France, the Soviet Union, and the United States.
Hitler's army began to take over much. Oh, okay, sorry, go ahead.
Hitler's army began to take over much of Europe. They attacked quickly in what was called Blitzkrieg or Lightning War. Soon Germany had captured much of Europe, including France, Denmark, and Belgium.
However, the Allies fought back. On June 6, 1944, they invaded the beaches of Normandy and soon liberated France. By March of 1945, the Allies had defeated much of the German army. On April 30th, 1945, Hitler committed suicide. The Holocaust and ethnic cleansing. Hitler was responsible for some of the most horrible crimes committed in human history. He hated Jewish people and wanted to exterminate them from Germany. He forced Jewish people to go to concentration camps where 6 million Jews were killed during World War II. He also had other people and races he didn't like killed, including handicapped people. So that's his biography. And yeah, he had a big influence during the World War II, thinking that he was doing the right thing, but obviously he was, I mean, I don't want to say he was crazy, but he was not really in a good state of mind. So let's look at a global depression. Germany, settled with debts from World War I, was especially vulnerable to shifting tides in the global economy. In 1919, defeated German leaders signed the Treaty of Versailles. The treaty committed Germany to pay reparations to Europe nations. The Allies believed that inflicting a deep financial wound would prevent Germany from rearming in the future. So you see how we have, it is kind of interesting to see that other nations thought that by them kind of forcing Germany to pay what they caused during the World War I, they would kind of settle down, just have a peaceful future. But it only provoked Germany to kind of, rearm even more and go into the war with all or nothing. So Mussolini's fascist movement. Like we mentioned, Benito Mussolini was the Italian leader. Mussolini promised power and glory for the Italian people. He pledged to bring order to a country that was fed up with years of strikes, riots, and poverty. Backed by his fascist militias, Mussolini terrorized his opponents and consolidated his people. Mussolini made it clear that he would govern the state with a heavy hand. He exerted his dictatorial powers by outlawing free speeches, labor unions, and any party that opposed his power. So again, we have two dictators and totalitarian ways of leading get together. So ultimately, nothing good can come from that. So that was about fascist movement. Okay, so we're gonna take a closer look about United States a little bit. The horrors of World War I caused many Americans to embrace a policy of isolationism. They believed the United States should abstain from involvement in any foreign conflicts. President Woodward Wilson crashed into his wall of isolationism sentiment when he sought support for the League of Nations in 1918. So we can see that Wilson's vision for enduring peace among nations, and he described this vision in his 14-point speech. We're not going to look at this speech, but it's just, I mean, it's described as General Association for Nations that would guarantee the freedom of all nations. So that was basically the main point of the speech. The Covenant of the League of Nations was written into the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, now we're going to look at the Neutrality Acts. Congress passed a series of Neutrality Acts from 1935 to 1937. The Neutrality Act of 1935 prohibited specific actions with a warring nation when the president declared a time of war. The act forbade selling arms or munitions to warring states. It also prevented Americans from traveling on vessels owned by a warring country. I think that this is a good act. It's just I don't know how sustainable it is, because people always find ways to manipulate with certain laws and all of that. So as we can see, Congress expanded the previews of the original Neutrality Act through several additional pieces of legislation. The Neutrality Act of 1936 stated that loans could not be made to warring nations. The Neutrality Act of 1937 outlawed the transport of munitions for a warring nation. Okay, let's look at Hitler's aggression in Europe. So we have March 1938, Austria. The Austrian Nazi Party had a foothold in the government. The Austrian government worked with Hitler to form an agreement that allowed Germany to annex Austria. The United States, Britain, and France stayed neutral on the union of Austria and Germany, even though it was a violation of the Treaty of Versailles. So, like we mentioned, Hitler wanted to take the whole Europe and the world ultimately. So let me just show you, see here where my mouse is, Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
That's my country. So Yugoslavia during World War II was a one country. Yugoslavia after that separated into I believe 6 countries or 5. Give me just a second to double check that. Okay, so we have Serbia, which is now my country. We have Montenegro, we have Croatians, we have Macedonia, Bosnia, and okay, oh yeah, Slovenia. Even though they claim that Kosovo is a separate country right now, Kosovo is a small part of Serbia, and it seeks their independence. But to be completely honest, Kosovo throughout the history was a Serbian part, and it will always remain a Serbian part. So I just wanted to point my country. Okay, now we have September 1938. Hitler's next target, Sudetenland. It was a territory that was part of Czechoslovakia. So that's what he invaded next. Then we have Czechoslovakia. He wanted to take the whole Czechoslovakia. With several Czechoslovakian political leaders detained by the Gestapo, the government caved to Hitler's demands. As Hitler's troops marched into Prague, there was no military response from France or Britain. So at the beginning of the war, there was no any response from France, Britain, or United States. We have September 1939, Poland. Hitler's troops crashed through the Polish borders and terrorized its citizens. Germany's powerful air force, the Luftwaffe, bombed major cities. 3 weeks later, Poland surrendered. So honestly, it didn't take them long to surrender. We have spring 1940, Western Europe. Hitler quickly advanced his war path through Western Europe. He conquered Denmark and Norway. Then he moved his troops into the Netherlands and Belgium. In June 1940, German tanks entered Paris. The German occupation of France sent a clear signal. Europe needed help to defend itself again against Hitler's aggression. Roosevelt responded by allowing Britain to lease US destroyers. Okay, let's look at this short video, just kind of just to see how it looked at the beginning, how Hitler's aggression looked.
Once again, the rattle of a German army on the march echoes in Europe. Where that march may end, no man can foretell, least of all the man who gave the order. But here before our eyes unfolds the drama of a nation dying. Hitler's troops enter Moravia. At Munich, the Führer gave his word that he wanted no more land in Europe. These pictures show you what his word is worth. Hungary, too, has marched across her border into the state of Czechoslovakia. Again, the government British cameras give you raw history. These pictures come from the villages of Bori, Yazo, and Varga. But these Hungarian troops would never have marched had it not been for the example of the German Reich. From the border, those divisions rolled solidly on through a bitter day in March. So they march into the capital of Czechoslovakia, and in the historic castle in Prague, Hitler looks down upon a conquered city from a very high window. You have seen the map change once again in Europe. Take warning and offer yourself for national service.
As you can see, this looks very peaceful, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to make sure that I'm recording. This looks very peaceful, but why? Because his previous attacks showed his power and his ability to conquer everything. So, like we read, it took 3 weeks to conquer and basically take the whole country. So that was his style. Do you have any questions for me?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Let's move on. Okay, we are gonna skip this. We're gonna do something else. Okay. At the beginning of the war, Roosevelt and Churchill exchanged letters that discussed the state of affairs in Europe and what the United States could do to assist Britain. When started as a diplomatic exchange, eventually grew up into a friendship and collaboration that would help the two countries remain a united front. Between Roosevelt and Churchill, reveal these serious issues they faced, as well as the light-hearted jokes that cemented their friendship. So records of correspondence between Roosevelt and Churchill reveal that, but the most important thing is the Lend-Lease program. So what is it? It is the program that would lease war supplies that would help the return at the end of the war. That would be returned at the end of the war. The Lend-Lease program gave Britain the supplies it needed. At the same time, it kept the United States from committing troops to the effort. While isolationists decreed the program as the end of neutrality, a majority of Congress passed the bill in March 1941. So again, we see that United States wanted to stay away from it. They wanted to lease all the war supplies and help in that way, but they didn't want any involvement during the war. Now we come to the point where United States had to react. The Pearl Harbor and the US entry into war. Let's look at this short video about the attack on Pearl Harbor.
On On Sunday, December 7th, 1941, shortly before 8 a.m., Japan launched a surprise attack on the United States of America by bombing the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The base was attacked by 350 Imperial Japanese aircrafts. Though the raid only lasted 75 minutes, the Japanese destroyed or damaged nearly 20 American naval vessels, including 8 battleships and more than 340 airplanes. Over 2,400 Americans died in the attack, and many more were wounded. While the attack on Pearl Harbor was a surprise, tensions between the U.S. and Japan had deteriorated over the decade, in particular with regards to Japan's expansion into China. The plan for attacking Pearl Harbor was to destroy the U.S.'s Pacific Fleet, a move which would give the Japanese time to carry out its plans to keep control of the Pacific without U.S. interference. The shock of the attack without declaration of war enraged the American public and rallied the nation to get behind a war many hoped to avoid. At the beginning of his speech to Congress requesting a declaration of war, President Franklin D. Roosevelt delivered this now famous line.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
On December 8, 1941, one day after the attack, the United States Congress declared war on Japan, officially entering World War II.
Yep. So that was how U.S. entered the war. While U.S. intelligence knew that Japan was ready to launch an offensive somewhere in the Pacific, they did not suspect an attack on Hawaii. More than 3,500 men and women were injured or lost their lives during the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Okay. War in the Pacific. On December 7th, 1941, military intelligence cracked a Japanese code stating that the Japanese would no longer negotiate with the United States. Washington assumed this meant Japan was ready to go to war. A warning was sent to Pearl Harbor, but technical problems delayed receipt of the message. Japanese bombers and torpedo planes launched an all-out assault on the harbor. The wounded base fought back, destroying Japanese aircraft and submarines. By the time the Japanese bombers retreated, the embattled base lost more than 2,300 men and women. The Japanese missed one of their main targets, 3 aircraft carriers, which were not in the harbor that day. The carriers would play a critical role in the future battles. Okay, we have General Douglas MacArthur, was one of the most decorated and respected generals in the military. After graduating from West Point, MacArthur served in World War I as Army Chief of Staff for the 42nd Division. So he's one of the most important people during the war. He gained the loyalty of his men by marching at the front of the battle lines and leading his troops to victory. Okay, let's look at the key battles and events of the Pacific. We have Philippines. The day after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japan invaded the Philippines. U.S. forces under the command of General MacArthur took a defensive position on the Bataan Peninsula. The troops defended the peninsula as supplies dwindled. Without outside support, the men faced illness and malnutrition at the darkest hour of MacArthur and the 80,000 men under his command. He received orders to leave these men and evacuate to Australia. Okay, we have Battle of the Coral Sea. Japanese aircraft carriers traveled through the Coral Sea en route to New Guinea. Battle of Midway. This is a very important battle. One of the critical battles in the war in the Pacific took place at Midway, a small atoll northwest of Hawaii's Big Island. While Midway may have been small in size, it was a major base for warplanes flying reconnaissance routes near Japan's newly acquired territories. If Japan took over these islands, it could easily launch another attack on Pearl Harbor. So it was a very important battle. Guadalcanal. In August 1942, U.S. troops began an offensive campaign to drive the Japanese out of two of the Solomon Islands, Guadalcanal and Tulagi. At Two Islands, 1943, U.S. forces retook Two Islands, one of the Aleutian Islands of Alaska, which was a U.S. territory at the time. The Japanese had taken this land in 1942, but Attu became the site of the only battle fought on U.S. land during the World War in the Pacific. PT-109, while idling in the water to avoid detection, USS PT-109, commanded by Lieutenant John F. Kennedy, was stuck midship and split in half. Although he was injured, Kennedy is credited with helping save the lives of crew members. Later, Kennedy became the President of the United States. We have Marine Islands. In June 1944, the fight moved eastward to the Marina Islands. The archipelago, which includes Guam, was a stronghold for the Japanese Navy. Similar to the other islands the United States invaded, the Marines offered strategic air bases for launching future attacks against Japan. Okay, this is very important. How during the war, people just need to get together and help each other as much as possible. And that's what happens during the World War II. The government realized need for a center of information to inform the public. The Office of War Information was created in June 1942 as an act of central government agency for news on the war. The idea of the propaganda was to influence the public to mobilize and support the war effort. So during the war, everyone needs to be on the same page and help just as much as possible. Okay, shaping public opinion. Let's look at these posters. I want you to choose one and just kind of spend 5 minutes writing about this, and then we can talk about it. So I want you to discuss a message. Which one do you want me to open? Every citizen as a soldier, the posters placed in wartime.
Not loaded over there yet.
Say again?
I'm still on the last right now. It's
Sorry, it
still
was breaking.
loading the next page for me.
Oh, okay. Can you see now?
Yes.
Okay. Which poster do you want me to open?
Fighting an Ideal America.
Okay. Whether created by government, corporation. Okay, so you kind of saw these posters. So let's do this. So choose one of the posters and discuss its message in a brief essay about 200-300 words. Be sure to start with a statement about which poster you have chosen. So do you have any poster in specific you wanna?
This is America where man picks a job.
Hold on, is that? This one?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just kind of spend 2-3 minutes, just kind of write a little bit about it, and then we can discuss. Okay. What did you write?
What?
Did you write something?
Yeah.
Okay, so what did you write?
This America where man picks a job. I feel like this shows the Germans that we have a choice, unlike them, where they had to forcefully go into the military. And it also shows the Japanese that we have a right to choose what we want to do, whereas they were forced in the military at a young age.
Well done. That was good. Very good point. It was these posters were kind of celebrate the middle class home tradition, the tradition of the family and free enterprise, just kind of the ideal of the roles of each in victory and offer the vision of life in an ideal post-war period. Very good point. Okay, just kind of a close end. Since we're close to the end of the session, let's just give a short summary. The atomic bomb and the end of the World War II. Although the United States entered World War II relatively late, with the bombing of Pearl Harbor in 1941, the country was fully entrenched on multiple fronts by 1943. The stakes were high and losses great, and the financial and industrial investments were well beyond anything the United States could have imagined. So more than 9,000 US soldiers killed in the battle are buried at the Normandy American Cemetery and Memorial in France. So that's how World War II ended, with atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And it's kind of interesting that Japanese didn't want to surrender after the first atomic bomb, but after the second one, they were officially done with the war, and they finally surrendered. So we have nowadays we see a a lot of traumas and just different things that were caused in the war. So something to learn from it for sure. Okay, do you have any questions for me?
No.
Okay, so give me just a short summary. Like what did you learn? What is kind of the most
I learned
big
about
thing that you learned?
and the operations that happened there. I learned about the reasons that World War II was caused. I learned about Hitler's background. I learned about the atomic bomb. I learned about Roosevelt and what's his name? Churchill's relationship and friendship. And I learned about the posters that we put up to support our people and to encourage people.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, you can always let me know and we'll discuss about it. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Bye.